Here's a fact that should terrify you. 2,000 years ago, someone in ancient Greece built a machine that could predict solar eclipses, track the motion of 5 planets, calculate the phases of the moon, and tell you when the next Olympic Games would be held. It fit inside a wooden box the size of a dictionary. It used differential gearing, a technology we thought was invented in the 16th century. For 1,500 years, that's not a typo. The same civilization that gave us Aristotle and the Parthenon also gave us analog computers. And when that civilization fell, the knowledge vanished so completely that when we finally found this machine in 1901, the world's top experts dismissed it as impossible. They argued it must have fallen off a 19th century ship by accident, because surely the ancient Greeks couldn't have built something this advanced. They were wrong. And what that means for our understanding of history and our assumptions about the permanence of human progress is something we need to talk about. Let's start with what you probably learned in school about ancient technology. The story goes something like this: stone tools, bronze weapons, iron plows, medieval water mills, Renaissance clockwork, Industrial Revolution, computers. A steady upward slope, each generation building on the last. Progress as inevitable as gravity. It's a comforting story. It suggests we're at the top of the mountain, looking down at our primitive ancestors. There's just one problem with that story. In 1902, an archaeologist named Valerio Stais was examining some corroded bronze fragments pulled from a shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. The fragments looked like rocks, green, calcified lumps that nobody had paid much attention to. But when Stais looked closer, he saw something that shouldn't have been there: a gear wheel, not a rough, primitive cog. Stais announced that the object was some kind of astronomical calculator. The academic community's response? Impossible. It must be a piece of modern equipment that accidentally fell onto the wreck site. Maybe a clock from a passing ship or a piece of the salvage diver's gear. This theory was nonsense. The gear was embedded inside marine concretions that take centuries to form. But it was comforting nonsense. Because if the gear was modern, the history books didn't need to be rewritten. So for the next 50 years, the Antikythera Mechanism sat in a museum storeroom, cataloged as a curiosity, ignored because it didn't fit the story we told ourselves about the past. Now here's the thing about historical blind spots. They don't happen by accident. This one survived because nobody with both the archaeological credentials and the mechanical engineering knowledge bothered to take a serious look. That changed in 1951 when a British physicist named Derek de Solla Price got obsessed. Price wasn't a classicist. He was a scientist with a thing for old instruments. And when he saw the X-rays of those corroded fragments, he saw what everyone had missed: the undeniable reality of complex gearing. In 1958, Price secured a grant from the American Philosophical Society. $460, roughly $4,000 in today's money. Enough for a flight to Athens and 10 days of living expenses. That modest investment would yield one of the highest returns in the history of archaeological research. Price spent years counting gear teeth from grainy X-ray plates. It was excruciating work. A single miscounted tooth could throw off the interpretation of the entire mechanism. But by 1974, he had enough to publish his magnum opus, Gears from the Greeks. His conclusion? The Antikythera Mechanism was the world's first computer, not a simple calculator. A sophisticated astronomical machine that could model the movements of the heavens using gear trains, including the Metonic cycle, a 19-year period that synchronizes lunar and solar calendars, and the Saros cycle, which predicts eclipses. Price wrote something that still gives me chills. It is a bit frightening to know that just before the fall of their great civilization, the ancient Greeks had come so close to our age, not only in their thought, but also in their scientific technology. But Price's work was incomplete. The X-rays of the 1970s were two-dimensional. Some of his gear counts were off, and when he died in 1983, the puzzle was solved in principle but incomplete in detail. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets genuinely mind-blowing. In 2005, an international team of researchers pointed an 8-ton industrial CT scanner at the mechanism's fragments. This wasn't a medical scanner. It was built to penetrate thick bronze. The machine was so massive it had to be transported from the UK to Athens with police escorts and street closures just to get it into the museum. The results rewrote everything we thought we knew. The scans revealed over 30 gears packed into a space no larger than a shoebox. And hidden inside that gear train was something that made the researchers stop and stare: a pin and slot mechanism. 2 gears mounted on top of each other, slightly offset, connected by a pin sliding in a slot. This wasn't a manufacturing defect. It was a mechanical simulation of the moon's variable velocity. Think about that for a second. The moon doesn't move at constant speed across the sky. It moves faster when it's closer to Earth, slower when it's farther away. This is essentially Kepler's second law of planetary motion. The idea that planets sweep out equal areas in equal times. Except this mechanism was modeling it 1,700 years before Kepler was born. The Greeks didn't just understand that the moon's speed varied. They built a bronze machine to calculate it. But the CT scans revealed more than just gears. They revealed text. The mechanism wasn't just a box of bronze wheels. It was covered in thousands of tiny Greek characters, some only a millimeter or 2 high, invisible to the naked eye, but captured by specialized imaging technology that could virtually tilt the light source to reveal surface details. What emerged was a user manual. The text describes a little sphere that moves across the face to show the moon's phase. It lists the rising and setting of various stars. It explains color codes for eclipse predictions: black for solar, red for lunar. And here's what's haunting about that manual. You don't engrave detailed instructions on a one-of-a-kind prototype. You write a manual for something being produced. The Antikythera Mechanism wasn't unique. It was probably one of many, a high-end piece of Hellenistic technology, the ancient equivalent of a luxury gadget designed to impress wealthy clients. The others were simply made of bronze, a valuable metal that got melted down over the centuries to make swords, cannons, and church bells. Only this one, protected by the catastrophe of a shipwreck, survived the recycling of history. So who built this thing? The most likely answer points to Rhodes, which was a center of astronomical research in the 2nd century BC. The astronomer Hipparchus lived there, the man who discovered the precession of the equinoxes. And we have literary evidence that devices like this existed. The Roman orator Cicero, writing in the 1st century BC, described a sphere built by Archimedes that was brought to Rome after the sack of Syracuse in 212 BC. Cicero wrote that when Gallus moved the globe, the moon followed the sun by as many turns on the bronze device as in the sky, from which it also resulted that a solar eclipse was shown on the globe. That's an almost perfect description of the Antikythera Mechanism. So the mechanism likely came from the tradition Archimedes established. And the ship carrying it? It was probably part of a Roman convoy hauling loot from the Greek world: statues, jewelry, luxury furniture, and this remarkable machine. Ripped from the home of a wealthy Greek or a temple treasury, packed into a crate, sent to Rome to be paraded in a triumph, and then claimed by the sea. Now, at this point you might be thinking, okay, so the Greeks were smarter than we thought. Interesting historical footnote. But what does this have to do with anything that matters today? Here's what it has to do with today. The Antikythera Mechanism proves something we don't like to think about. Technological progress is not guaranteed. The Greeks had analog computers. They had steam engines, the Eolipile of Haran. They had precision mapping, and then, over the course of a few centuries, as the Roman Empire fractured and the Mediterranean world fragmented, that knowledge didn't just stall, it vanished. Geared clockwork of this complexity didn't reappear in Europe until the 14th century. That's a gap of 1,500 years. We assume that once something is invented, it stays invented. That once knowledge exists, it persists. The Antikythera Mechanism is a bronze reminder that this assumption is dead wrong. Civilizations can reach the precipice of advanced technology and then fall off a cliff. The Dark Ages weren't just a plateau in human development. They were a steep drop from which it took over a millennium to recover. And here's the thing that connects this ancient Greek computer to the American story. In 1770, a Pennsylvania clockmaker named David Rittenhouse built a device called an orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system. Thomas Jefferson saw it and wrote that Rittenhouse has by imitation approached nearer its maker than any man who has lived from the creation to this day. In 1774, John Adams stopped at Princeton on his way to the Continental Congress and saw that same orrery. He wrote that it was a most beautiful machine that exhibits almost every motion in the astronomical world. The Founding Fathers stood before Rittenhouse's orrery with the same wonder that a Roman senator might have felt standing before the Antikythera Mechanism 2,000 years earlier. Both machines represented the same idea, that the universe is governed by rational, predictable laws that human beings can understand and model. That idea was political. If the cosmos operates by natural laws, then maybe human society should too. The U.S. Constitution is, in a very real sense, a political machine, a system of checks and balances designed to create equilibrium, just like the gears that keep the planets in their orbits. The intellectual tradition that built the Antikythera Mechanism is the same tradition that shaped the American experiment. So let's be clear about what we've discovered. 2,000 years ago, the Greeks built machines that could model the cosmos with mathematical precision. They used engineering principles, differential gearing, epicyclic mechanisms that we thought were medieval inventions. And then they lost that knowledge for a millennium and a half. This didn't become a blind spot by accident. The mechanism survived because it was buried at sea. Everything else was melted down or forgotten. And when researchers first found the gears, the academic establishment dismissed them because the evidence contradicted the story they already believed. Here's why this matters now. We store our knowledge in the cloud, in server farms, in infrastructure that requires constant power and maintenance. A sufficiently severe solar storm, a prolonged collapse of the electrical grid, a breakdown of the supply chains that keep our data centers running, and we could lose access to more knowledge than the Library of Alexandria ever held. The Antikythera Mechanism is a memento mori for the digital age. Hardware endures. The knowledge to build it can die. The Greeks looked at the night sky and didn't just see myths. They saw math, and they built a machine to capture it. We found that machine at the bottom of the sea, and it took us a century to understand what we were looking at. The past isn't primitive, it's forgotten. And the question that should keep us up at night is this: what else are we forgetting right now that our descendants will one day have to rediscover?